It's time to look through the lens of this week's Photography Out Loud. My name is Paul Davis, and as always, I'm joined with Joel Longbone. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, good you. I'm
That
I'm
was.
loving the unexpected nature of your intros now.
I
Definitely
had
adds a
I
different
had
dynamic.
I had a really good one lined up, but it might have been a little bit inappropriate. So I was supposed to run it with
Okay,
you beforehand,
okay.
because it was borderline. Anyway, so how's your week been, Joel?
Yeah, good. What did we do? Oh, Wednesday we shot a wedding in this
Yeah.
heat and almost melted like popsicles in ovens. Um, then we live streamed a funeral yesterday and it was very, very hot when we did the outside part. And then I've just travelled all day today. Um, not to Kent to the golf, but to see some friends in South Wales. So yeah, that was good times in this heat. But there we go. I kid you not, every 5 to 10 minutes there was like a traffic jam because a car had broken down. I don't know if it's
Oh, no
just the
way.
heat is killing cars, but yeah, got there in the end. Got here at what, 4:15, so plenty of time.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. You did really well. Did really well to get here just in time.
How's
So
your week
see,
been?
you see that everyone. Uh, Joel will he'll fight the heat. He'll fight any sort of weather to make sure that he's here every week. Uh,
Oh dear.
until we decide that we're going to have a summer holiday at some point,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, maybe. I was thinking about that. Maybe next Friday should be. I don't
maybe
know.
maybe we won't be here next Friday. Ah,
Yeah, I don't know. We'll
it's
see.
like the news section. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
maybe I don't know. We'll have to have a chat because I am off next week, so not going anywhere.
that
But
that is That is very, very
so,
true. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, no, my week's been pretty good. Like yourself, just very sticky.
mhm.
Just a lot of heat, which I'm sure everyone potentially watching has suffered along with the heat as well. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, we're seeing people joining in live. Let us know that you're watching live. Give us a wave, a hello. Let us know
How
that
many
you're
sun
there.
emojis do you reckon we'll have, and that hot
I
face
think we need to
emoji?
I think we need to see some of them. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, it's been a rather hot one, and I'm hoping that everyone watching has had a nice weekend and keep it a nice week and keeping hydrated at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah, interestingly, news this week. Not a vast amount of news, but the news that we do have, I think, is quite exciting, Joel. So Tamron have released a development announcement for a new lens that they're doing for Fujifilm X mount,
Ooh,
which
good news for
is
Fuji people.
and it's the 18 to 300. So it's the one that they've made for the Sony E mount system, but obviously they're converting it so it will work across on the X mount. So a couple of nice things that's obviously about this. It's showing that Tamron themselves are going to be so they've announced it as the first X mount lens that they're going to be doing, indicating that they might be doing some more in the
Some
future,
more.
which would be really nice to see from Tamron. It's part of that sort of that new range of lenses that we've seen from Tamron. That if anyone watching has heard me and Joel sort of talk about, we are quite a big fan of them. So it's got the new VXD focusing system that's built inside of it. So you're getting that very quiet, very quick focusing system built into it as well. And again, what we've seen from the Tamron system in the past is that it's tiny. So if you get an option to see the E mount one, and potentially compare it to some of the Fujifilm lenses that are out there. I was trying to do it today. I was trying to get out the 18 to 300 and compare it against one of the Fujifilm lenses just to see sort of where it sits. I
Mhm.
haven't had a chance yet, but from sort of memory of seeing the E mount one, I think it's going to be the same size as the 18 to 135 or thereabouts
It's
from
pretty
from
impressive.
Fuji. Um, but then obviously you're getting all the way up to 300. So It's going to be a very, very tasty lens, and vibration control in the lens as well. So it's going to have that stabilization that is needed. No mention to how that's going to work alongside the IBIS that's built into the body, but I'm guessing if they're making it for X mount systems, that's probably the bit that why they're saying that they're
Working on
making it.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
part of the
because they have
testing.
to
But
potentially make it work with XT4, XH1, and XS10,
yeah,
potentially.
yeah,
But I
which is
suspect they
probably
might
the
have to
hard
cancel
bit.
one or the other, won't they? Yeah. So, I think it's great news for Fuji users to be able to have that focal range, because obviously Fuji don't produce one. The 18135 is the closest, and now they brought out a 70 to 300, which has been a very, very popular lens.
If you can
So
get
yeah, I
one.
think yeah, it's true. Um, but yeah, that kind of walk around lens has been really popular, and also the 18400 that Tamron do as well has been very popular for us. So um, yeah, I think it's going to be a welcome addition to those that either use Fuji or have held off because they can't get that travel lens that they use on their Canon or Nikon, perhaps. So yeah, I'm excited. I hope it kind of performs the way that we hope it will, because that'll be a great seller and make people very, very happy that they can wander around with just one lens.
Yeah, which kind of has influenced nearly a word. Uh, this week's episode as well, Joel, because obviously, and I can't believe we haven't done this before. And if we have, I apologize. Or we might have maybe brushed on it in like maybe other episodes and said we're going to expand on it. But
Yeah,
um, what we wanted to talk a little bit about today was lens choices and really sort of talking about why there's so many different lenses sort of on the market at the moment,
yeah,
and how those will influence you in sort of fairly different ways. And obviously, when we heard about the Tamron development announcement, from this, it sort of brought this sort of potential conversation to the front, really.
for sure. Should we maybe set ourselves a time limit? Because I feel like this could be a conversation that would go on for hours and hours.
Oh, I don't know. I get a bit itchy on time limits. I think
We
we'll
did
just.
well last time.
No, we did. We did. Yeah, we certainly did. So
I just think,
this is.
yeah, because where are we going to start? Because are we going to talk about mounts, or are we just going to talk about focal lengths? Because they influence one another. Um, so I don't know. It's
I think ultimately, the main thing about a lens is your focal length, isn't it? And the various different focal lengths. I mean, have you got a preference into what type of lens that you like to use, or?
as with everything, it just depends what I'm using it for. Um,
Yeah,
but I will say that at the wedding, using the 28-75 2.8 from Tamron was really good. It just felt right. You could zoom in and out very smoothly. So as you were walking, so I was doing shots of like the groomsmen walking, and I could walk backwards and still smoothly turn the zoom, which was really nice. It didn't stick at any point, which some lenses sometimes have that point, and it's quite frustrating. But also that 70 to 200 f4 Sony, that was a very, very nice lens to shoot on yesterday. Um, but that I'm very partial to a few primes as well. I'm
yeah,
particularly fond of the 55 1.8 from Sony, and I really like the Sigma 35 1.4, which is a very special lens. And then also the lens in the X100V, which is a 23 mm, but it's 35 equivalent on the APS-C. But yeah, I think yeah, it just depends, doesn't it? Like I mentioned about macro lenses yesterday, not yesterday, Wednesday, for the ring shots and things. Do you know what I mean? That
yeah.
I think there are times when you just need a very specific lens for a very specific job, and
Yeah.
then other times there's lenses that are just very, very good at doing a multitude of things. So, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I think you've stumbled on quite something, in well, not important, but just bringing it something just to talk about for a second, because there are lenses that are designed for a very particular set of skills.
Sorry,
Uh,
Liam Neeson.
yeah, like a macro lens. So obviously, if you're wanting to do macro, then ideally you're going to be wanting to buy a macro lens, and it's the same. So though macro is very popular, that is one of, I would say, um, though it's very specific in what's doing, it's a very popular lens range. And again, there's quite a couple of different macro lenses that you can get, but there's also some different types of specialist lenses as well. So for things like tilt shift, and again, I think if you don't really know sort of what these lenses are, then you probably don't need them because you haven't really done the sort of research into it. Because it's a case of if someone asks me like, well, what is a macro lens, and it's a case, well, are you thinking of doing anything close up? Then well, it's a case, well, no, not really. Then you don't really need a macro lens.
Although there is a bit of a caveat there, because the macro lenses can tend to be very good portrait lenses if they were designed as such. Like the Fuji 80mm macro is great for portraits, and a
Yeah,
lot of people use the 100mm Canon, don't they, as a portrait lens as well? So
yeah. I think that,
because they tend to be fast,
that's
don't they? So you get bokeh nicely,
fast-ish,
and so
fast-ish.
yeah.
So
But
but
if you want a
you
lens
get
that's going to do
faster.
a few jobs for you, like if you were thinking about an 85mm 1.4, or you're thinking of doing some macro and some portrait, then probably the macro
Yeah,
lens makes more sense to spend that extra bit of money on a lens that'll do essentially both for you. Not as well as the 85mm 1.4, for instance,
yeah.
but equally 100mm is quite a nice compression uh, focal length, isn't it, for portraits? So.
And that sort of brings us on quite nicely to it's the thing that we're always sort of struggling with photography, which is there's always some sort of compromise, isn't there? And
Yes.
that's where zooms have come in, I think, more than anywhere,
Mm.
because I don't think anyone can sort of complain about prime focal length quality, because the quality of them. I mean, if you're really looking for image quality, if that's the thing that you can do, then there's lenses that don't have zoom, and typically we call these prime lenses, just because they don't have any zoom. Um, and obviously, because there's no moving elements inside of these, manufacturers and producers of lenses can really refine down the quality of these particular lenses. So you're getting excellent image quality. I think also as a byprocess of this as well, they also make them very quick as well. So they do become into lenses that potentially are very good in low light environments. So if you're wanting to do like starry shots, or if you're wanting to, like Joel was saying before, blur the background, add a bit of bokeh to the image. But again, the compromise there is carrying potentially, depending on what you're doing, 5 or 6 different lenses.
And they will tend to
Around you.
be, and they'll tend to be quite chunky when they're faster for full
Yes.
frame or even APS-C, and you're thinking that's quite a lot of lenses to carry around with you if you're wanting to cover quite a wide kind of focal length range. And but equally, like you said, it's a compromise. And if you want very, very, very good quality glass, very sharp, very bright, great contrast and color reproduction, then you kind of have to carry big lumps of glass around with you, don't you, to achieve
Yeah.
those things. But I think quite often the trade-off is useful. And also, it depends again even more what you use it for, in the sense that a run and gun event, maybe a sporting event where you're going from like wide shots to kind of more zoomed in shots, then primes probably aren't the job for you, the lens for the job for you. But then also primes in terms of telephoto lenses, like you just get fantastic quality. It's it's one of those things where if it's at the right distance away from you, you're going to get fantastic shots, and if it's like a bit too close, then you're like, oh, that's awkward. You can't get any further back. So yeah, like you said at the beginning, that trade-off, that compromise is very important when deciding on lenses. But equally, if your bank balance allows it, just buy all the lenses you want to use and just pick and choose, and
Yeah.
maybe get an assistant to carry them all around for you, because you'll feel like a donkey after about half an hour of carrying that many lenses around with you.
I mean, we do recommend this. A, for two reasons. We are a camera shop, so that's the first thing. We're ultimately going to say, yeah, just buy everything.
Buy all the
But
things.
yeah, buy all the things. But it's a very fair point though, and like you said, you've got a couple of zooms and a couple of primes as well, so it's sort of mix and matching, and sort of over the years you've been able to sort of pick up a couple of zooms and pick up a couple of primes, and then actually decide on the day what you prefer to actually use.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you need to be set in stone. So I would say if you're buying a first lens, it's always very, very handy to buy something that zooms. I would say as a first purchase.
I was just
Or
thinking,
Joel's going to
oh,
say,
so no, exactly. Get a zoom lens, but then if you go into software like Lightroom that can read your metadata, you can read off which focal length you use most often. And we quite often suggest that to people who come into the shop if they're not quite sure. Is, well, if you've already got, say, a 2470 or 24-105, something like that, then it gives you quite a broad focal range to start working with. And then you can find out that if you're shooting at 24 a lot, then maybe a 24 prime or a 35mm prime, depending on how close you want to be. Or if you're finding that you're at that long end a lot, then maybe you need to get something like an 85 or a 100 or 135 because you want that reach. And I think that's a very useful way, because subconsciously you're finding your style in terms of what focal length you like to shoot at, but it's not influenced by what lens you have on at the time. You're actually being influenced by the fact that you can just twist, or you can kind of walk closer or further back, because that's another slight segue is people say, well, if you just buy a prime, then you just walk closer or walk further away, which can work, but not all the time, because creatively that's not always the best choice, because walking further back with, I don't know, a 50mm lens is different to walking closer with a 35mm lens. You get a completely different shot. Your image will change, especially if you're shooting a portrait. The shape of the person's face can change quite a lot between, like shooting at 24mm or 85mm. There's a big difference between,
yeah,
like
because
24mm, your face starts getting a bit broader looking.
we're talking about perspective here, aren't we, and
Mm,
how it
yeah,
relates to what everything it is, and it really starts to affect when you've got things sort of within the foreground and sorry, the foreground and the background, and where your subject sort of stands. I mean, the thing that we're filming on at the moment is a 28mm, and because there's not a lot really going on, it's a very, very flat sort of thing that's happening here. Then nothing really looks wrong, until I start to put my hands up, and
mm,
then obviously the
yeah,
the size of my hand is not in
yeah,
relation to everything. So again, you can make some different effects uh, with using with using wide angle lenses, with
yeah,
portraiture, landscaping. It's not just about sometimes moving your feet; it's about picking that focal length, isn't it?
for
So,
sure,
and
100%.
typically, I know some people will know this, but we have a focal length that is set as standard. So it's kind of what we see with our eye, which is 50 mil equivalent. I nearly said
On
that wrong, didn't I?
35mm full frame.
Yeah, yeah, on 35 mil full frame, yeah. And that's sort of like a standard that we use in the industry as well. Everything sort of relates back to full frame or 35 mil. And typically, when we go wider than 50 mil, then we will start to push our background away from us. So, as I said before, my hands are going to seem bigger than my face because the background is being pushed away. And it's the same if we go above 50 mil. So uh, when we increase that focal length, that number, it's going to bring in our background, making seem things closer than they actually are.
Yeah, did you see that article about, I think it was in America, where somebody had shot people on the beach, and it was on, maybe a 200 or 300 millimeter lens, and it looked like they were really close together because of the way that the lens had compressed it. But when you see it on a wide angle lens, they're like miles away from each other, and that
Yeah,
really kind of helps illustrate how a lens is a perspective influencer. Um, the same way as if you hold up a tube, like a kitchen roll tube versus a toilet roll tube versus a gift wrap tube. Like if you do that, you can see very quickly how it affects the way that you view something, and that's why um, people will find a difference when they move from APS-C to full frame or back or micro four thirds, and the way that it changes what the effective focal length does to the image, which I think is interesting because obviously with full frame, a lot of wildlife and sports photographers will still shoot in crop mode because they want that kind of perspective or that added focal length reach that it gives
yeah,
them with the crop ratio of 1.5 or 1.6 or whatever it might be, or two times in micro four thirds. And that's the thing with lenses, isn't it? Because there's so many different things to consider, not to complicate it, because ultimately a lens, you'll learn how your lens works and you'll kind of get to grips with what it does. But kind of marrying the quality side of the lens, aperture availability, and then also the fact that you can change how that focal length behaves creatively. It, it it fascinates me even now, and like I've been shooting for ages, but just the way that it changes how you can shoot and thinking, like I think I was saying to you at the wedding, like the amount of times I try and step back more so that I can zoom in more essentially to get that kind
yeah.
of more pleasant
Just get a different
um,
effect. Yeah,
and that more pleasant compression as well, and like the separation between the subject and the background. Because at events, it's quite useful, isn't it? Where people might be pulling a funny face because they're mid talk or mid mouthful or something, but the people that you really want to photograph look great. Do you know what I mean? And you want to kind of separate the two, which I think's an interesting use of focal length. So
yeah, no, definitely. And again, it's just there's no right or wrong, lens that you're typically going to use. You know, again, there's certain lenses that are specialized, but even the way that Joel explained can be used in different ways as well. Just going back to that macro, just because it's a macro lens doesn't necessarily need to use it for actual macro. Is that you can use it for other things as well. And it's the same. You might hear wide angle lenses. So when that number is very below sort of that 50 mil equivalent in 35 full frame, um, that's normally considered like a landscape lens because it gets everything in. It's going very very wide, but there's nothing absolutely stopping you from using like a 400, 500 mil, 600 mil on a landscape. Um, I
well,
think
70 to
going
200 is a super popular lens for landscapes, isn't it?
it is, yeah, yeah, and it's becoming because again, the way that photography has become more popular now, and people are experimenting more and more and more.
And it
You,
draws your
you
image in, doesn't it?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I've never personally been a big fan of going really wide on landscapes. I've always, again, preferred that sort of 75 mil
Yeah.
equivalent in sort of focal length. It's a favorite sort of mine, that
And
length.
creatively, it allows you to um, be more aware of what's in your frame. Um,
Yeah,
if you really want to capture a vista, then that's a great way. But equally, capturing a vista like we spoke with Peter Neal. Was it Peter Neal? Yeah, the Sony guy.
With the
And
85 1.4 panoramic.
Panorama, yeah, and
Oh, mate,
that's
I still
that
keep
kind
thinking
of
about
the creative usage of focal length, but achieving something that you could achieve with
that.
a
And the
wide
finish.
angle lens, but you can't achieve it with a wide angle lens because the whole perspective issue is completely
Yeah.
different.
I mean,
And that
that is just
drawing you into the
classic.
shot,
Yeah, that shot there. I mean,
experimentation.
it's going back. I don't know what show it was.
It was
So
the
it
Christmas one, the winter show.
yeah, yeah. So the last show. So it's probably about 10 months old. But yeah, go back and have a look at that 85mm 1.4. But then doing like a panoramic on it was
It looks
absolutely
amazing,
insane. It
especially at the
blew my
gigs
head
that he
away.
did. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, absolutely stunning. And that's, it's a really good way of showing, of what different things that you can actually do with them as well, and experimenting through. So nothing is, you can use any sort of lens that you want to capture anything. They're just going to give you different effects. And, it's that thought process and that thinking that, really makes your sort of photography alive. And, just having a really good play with different focal lengths. And potentially that is a really good sort of way to come back to why we recommend sort of zooms to start with, and even these longer focal lengths. So going back to these Sigma 18 to 300, these Tamron 18 to 300s and 18 400s that they do, um, they're always going to be a really good lens that you're always going to use. So even when you build up your kit in the future, uh, you're always going to have one of these sort of super zoom lenses to fall back on, just for when you want to experiment, that you don't actually know what you're going to be doing when you're going out. So having something, a super zoom lens
You can
is
turn your camera
really
into
handy
full
because you've got that.
tourism mode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
It's
just
like
having a
that
little
kind
part.
of, it's like that in between of having like a compact with a super zoom or a bridge with a super zoom, isn't it? But you
Yeah,
get the
it
quality
really
of
is.
having a
You
bigger
get the
sensor and
quality of
things
what
like
you're
that.
having.
So,
Yeah, no, 100%.
and
And
also,
I,
going
go
on.
on.
I was going to
No,
say
you
about
carry.
the wide angle in terms of just the physics of having to bend light that much and the way that influences the creativity. Like you were talking about the other day with you like the 28mm being able to get really close into like a couple of people at an event because it gives a different vibe to shooting a bit
I was
further away. And
at 17. Yeah,
say again.
I was at 17 shooting
Oh,
portrait.
17. Okay. But that gives you a different vibe, and also it depends on who the people are, because it's not going to be great on a person that's on the edge because it'll make them look larger than they really are. Um, but equally in the middle, it gives you that kind of, I don't know, like a separation that's it's kind of, yeah, it gives a
Separation in a
much
different way. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and then also the using distortion to show people in their environment or a subject in their environment changes what you can achieve as well, which you'd never be able to achieve on a 70 to 200, for instance. Um, and again, it comes back to the creativity of it and also what it is you see as a photographer and the image that you want to achieve as a photographer, because ultimately that's unless it's a very specific commercial job, that's why you're photographing is because it's for your own creative desire or whatever. So I think that is an influencing factor as well, is knowing the more you know about what lenses do to your images, the more that you can play with that creatively.
yeah. No, 100%. And I like personally. I like, and again, this is why there's so many different lenses sort of on the market. Just sort of bringing it full round is that you've got your primes, and obviously there's all the focal lengths that are available in there as well. And then on the opposite end of the scale, you've got your super zooms, including sort of high focal length ones as well. So you've got like the amazing Sigma, with the 150 to 600 in the contemporary and the
Even
sport.
the 60 to 600,
Yeah, all
which is
all of that stuff.
bonkers focal range.
it's it's all amazing, all amazing stuff. And then obviously you've got all the in between stuff as well. So Sigma have done a very good job about of giving very close, or I'd say probably on point as a prime focal length, but in a very short zoom as well. So there's that. The one I
1835
love is the APS-C 1835. I
or
thought, who's going to
1.8.
want something like that? Yeah, it's 1.8, which is absolutely amazing. But I was thinking that the focal length, nobody's going to buy it. It's been a super popular lens for us because it's just as sharp as
Yeah,
their prime stuff.
and it's very popular with filmmakers as well, isn't it? And video
Yeah,
content creators, because it has that kind of cinematic vibe to it as well, which I think is very cool. And also the usability. 1835 doesn't sound like a very big range, because if you were to say I don't know, a 200 to 250, that's like neither here nor there. But obviously, the
well, they have
wider
it.
you get,
They have a 50 to 100
yeah,
to
50 to
go
100,
alongside
yeah.
it as well, don't they?
But when you add a millimeter in wide, it's quite a big difference. So you like even the 10 to 20, which has sadly been discontinued, was a great lens because it was much wider than say a 17 to 55, or whatever, 17 to 50, sorry. And it makes a big difference, that extra 7 millimeters, because you really get a lot more in your shot. And that bringing talk about primes with like the Samyang range,
You
the
know what? I'm
14
so
mil,
glad you've mentioned it as well. Yeah,
the
I was
14
going to
mil
mention.
2.8, great lens, especially for the money, and the 12 mil f2 for APS-C. They're great, and we've been selling a lot of them for astro work or landscapes where people don't care about having autofocus capability, because arguably autofocus on anything past maybe 16 mil is, especially for landscapes and stuff, is neither here nor there, because pretty much everything's going to be in focus. And that's part of another consideration with lenses, is understanding what you can buy for your money, because
Yeah,
a lot of people have come in and said, "Oh, I'm going to give it a go," for the cost of maybe £300 or £400, a lens that optically is pretty good, and but gives you the creativity that you'd never be able to afford. If you're going to buy a Nikon 14 to 24 or something like that, you'd be spending a lot more money. And I think that's also part of your lens buying process, and why we'd argue that it's great for you to come in and speak to us, because we can help guide you on those decisions, because we see these lenses day in, day out, and we know the prices, and we hear from our customers. We'll tell people if somebody bought a lens and didn't like it, and we'll tell you not to buy it if it's for certain tasks, and we'll say we don't think it's the best for that task. We've had a few customers come in and buy that lens, and they weren't particularly happy for that use case, but other things they were really happy. So if you want to use it for interior shots, maybe that lens is a great lens, but if you want to use it for astro, it's just not fast enough, or you get
yeah,
too much chroma at the edges or whatever. And also, again, focal length is one thing, but then understanding how your lens is going to perform. If you want to shoot into the sun a lot, that's a massively different conversation to if you're going to shoot in the studio. And like the
yeah.
way even lens flare behaves, because people are like diehard fans of certain lenses just because the way it handles light coming in directly, because it just flares really beautifully, whereas other lenses just are just not very nice looking.
Yeah.
And again, that's why speaking to us, or also trying them out in the shop, like we'll happily allow you to try out lenses, bring your camera in or bring your memory card in, and we'll let you shoot a variety of lenses to see the difference and why you might go for one over the other, and also whether spending that extra money is worth it, because in a lot of cases spending that extra isn't going to get you you know that extra, if that makes sense. So, are you all right? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, that's just gone.
what's gone?
Hello. Hello.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
hello.
back.
Okay,
Sorry about
that's all good.
that. I think this
Yeah,
one's
so I
dying.
think
This one's dying.
oh dear. So I think just ultimately, like every conversation we pretty much have about gear, it's understanding why you want it. And we'd
Yeah.
strongly recommend that you either speak to us or, other people that are very knowledgeable about gear, and don't solely base it on just one person's opinion. Because we get a lot of people who come in, they've watched YouTube, and there's so much good content on YouTube. Not going to knock
Yeah.
YouTube or YouTubers. Some of the stuff they produce is incredible. But equally,
Some
a
of
lot
it's
of people,
rubbish.
yeah, a lot of people will talk about a new camera, and they'll say, this is an amazing camera. And it might well be for video work or for, vlogging, but then they want to use it for sports or macro or nighttime photography, and it's awful. And people come in and they go, oh yeah, I bought this camera and it doesn't do what I want it to do. And you're like, well, it was never
Yeah.
designed to do that job in the first place, was it? So, um, and it's no different to, we'll get into a quick analogy. It's no different to
Yes.
buying a car, is it? And
Oh,
saying,
car analogy. Come on, Joel.
sorry, I could do boats. Shall I do a boat analogy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or an aeroplane analogy?
Aeroplane. We haven't done aeroplane before.
There we go. So if you want to get from A to B very quickly, you'd use a jet, wouldn't you? But it's going to be very loud and it's going to cost you a lot of money in fuel. Whereas if you just want a nice Sunday afternoon flight, then you'd buy,
I'm
I don't know,
so
a
interested to
Cessna or
find out what you're
something.
going to say.
Yeah, like a
Oh, what?
Cessna, a Cessna single prop aeroplane. That it's different, isn't it? And everything costs
Yeah.
different amounts, maintenance, running costs, all this. And that's the same with lenses. Lenses are designed for very, very specific jobs. Like even if you look at the Canon L lenses, the 70 to 200 2.8 and the 70 to 200 f4 were designed for two different purposes. And most people would
Absolutely.
just see one stop of light difference. It's a bit lighter, um, but they're designed to do different jobs. One's better at portraits perhaps than the other because they were designed in such a way to improve the quality of the bokeh, for instance. And
Yes.
I think people need to understand what they're trying to achieve, and also try and get do the research to understand what they were designed for, rather than just going on a forum and somebody says, oh, you always got to buy 70 to 200 2.8, that extra stop is going to be worth all that money. And you think, no, like f4 lenses, unless you're really using it low light, I'd much prefer an f4 lens.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have to carry it around all day.
Easy to carry. Yeah.
100%. And there's not going to be like the optical issues, like they're just as sharp, if not sharper sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Definitely in the new range that's released. I mean, we're seeing some bonkers lenses that Canon are producing. So like their f8 and f11 lenses. What they like
yeah,
800 mil
yeah,
f11, aren't they? So,
yeah.
and again, optically, it's so sharp. It's
Yeah.
so sharp. Really, really
Considering
affordable.
how much it costs, yeah, exactly. But that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
also, quickly, and don't want to use up all our time, given we've been
Mm,
speaking a while. But mounts has made a big difference. If you look at what
yes.
Nikon can produce optically now, oh, there we go, he's broken something. Um, if you look at what Nikon have achieved going from F mount to Z mount, and they can produce some very bright, very fast lenses, without having to make the same sacrifices and compromises that they had to with their F mount lenses. And the same with Canon with their RF moving away from EF mount. That's made a big difference to what they can achieve. And because people perhaps don't realize that lens manufacturers, whether they produce cameras as well or not, they have to go through a whole process of figuring out how they can bend light as much as possible with as little kind of um, issues as possible. Like it's like magic, if you ask me. Like the fact that they can produce lenses, like the 7 to 14 Olympus, for
Yeah,
instance, or the 8
that's
to 16 or 8 to 18, whichever one it is.
it's not
To
only
be
light
able to,
bending, it's mind bending. Yeah,
yeah, and the fact that they're so um, well corrected. Um,
yeah,
Obviously, there is some distortion, but the fact that it's so well corrected optically, but then also with the profiles that you can get an image that is sharp corner to corner, and the light transmission is fantastic across the frame. And like that just wouldn't have been achievable uh, in like the past, perhaps. Do you know what I mean? And I think people also have to understand that physics is part of, well, it's the only part of lens manufacture, isn't it? And seeing the difference between shooting into the light or with the light behind you, or shooting objects that have light, like direct light passing through them, and seeing how the light behaves. It just blows my mind that companies can start sticking in like ED lenses and things like that to control how all of that behaves, and still get an image that's sharp, and it's a lightweight lens, and it's not like a big enormous lump of glass trying to achieve
yeah,
it. It's
yeah. And it
magic.
also helps us, with our memory. It's like doing Sudoku, isn't it? Trying to remember all these different letters
Yeah,
that are
it's true.
after all these new lenses, because manufacturers have developed new technology to put into them. So you'll start seeing extra letters and things, and
It's
all
like buying
different
a car.
manufacturers. Yeah, no, it is.
ABS,
Yeah, yeah.
TC, or AC, all of these different things.
And we see this mainly because each manufacturer develops their own type of system. So they might develop their own type of autofocus system, or they might develop their own type of coating, so they'll call it something. uh, so Canon love that nano coating that's at the moment. Obviously Nikon are using their fluoride coatings and stuff like that, so you'll see FO and nano and all that sort of stuff at the end of lenses. So yeah, it's a nice little memory game trying to remember all the latest sort of
I
updates that
remember
are
seeing,
available for different lenses.
I think it was Nikon. I remember seeing a web page, and it just listed all of the different letters and what they could mean on
Yeah,
a
what they
lens.
actually
It was
mean.
like, this is ridiculous. It's like
Yeah, it is
almost
absolutely bonkers.
like a sentence of letters and numbers for lenses. But it's fascinating that manufacturers also create the same lens in different specifications on
Yes,
purpose. Like if you think about the Fuji with the AFD, is it AFD? Yeah, it was AFD, wasn't it?
you've
The
forgotten
56 mil 1.2, and they had the coatings. And
APD. Yeah,
APD, sorry, APD, that was
yeah,
it. See, this is the problem with all these silly letter combinations. But yeah, because they behave differently, and like it affected
yes,
autofocus and things like that. And like you were saying with the autofocus, they come up with their own different designs. But even that influences whether you can use it for photography or videography.
yeah,
Um, and also the ability on longer lenses to be able to cut your focal range in terms of you know 3 meters to infinity instead of maybe 1.2 to infinity, um, to get through glass or chain link fence or whatever is in your foreground. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's great that lens manufacturers have been able to keep pushing the boat out and trying to figure out ways of making it easier for us to be able to achieve the shots that we see in our minds. So,
that's brilliant. Well, Joel, before I send you on down another rabbit hole, because obviously we can see that you're very passionate about different lenses, which is what we're wanting to see from
I
you
told
know
you this is why a timer was important.
yeah. Well, before we get too carried away, we haven't even touched on any of the comments yet.
No,
So
that's very
I
true.
think
So
it'll be
let's
a
have a
good
look.
time to have a look at some of the comments that are coming in
Yeah.
live.
Uncle Ray says, "Hi, you two. Can't miss your news blogs. Retirement is great, but missing you all. Oh, we
Ah,
are very glad you're here. We very much miss you too. You need to come and visit us for fish and chips. Um, yeah, we'd love to see you. And also, if you get bored, we'll stick you behind the counter." Ian says, "Hello, Paul and Joel. Nice weather, but a bit hot for me." Yeah, I think we concur with you on both points. Hello to you too. And yes, the weather is very, very warm. Adrian says, do we have any indication of pricing for the Tamron lens? I'm not sure if they mentioned it.
No,
but
there's been absolutely no indication of pricing whatsoever. So they are planning to officially announce, hopefully sometime in the autumn, but we just don't know. I think they're really excited about talking about it, so they wanted to do a development announcement. Either that or something was just about to be leaked, so they officially put something out. We don't know, but it's there'll be more information to come within the next 2 or 3 months. So it's a bit of a wait, but it's going to be worth it.
Rob says, my 3 favourite lenses are an Industar 50 f2 M42 adapter to L mount, with the Sigma 56 1.4 and my Leica 18 56mm, all of which I've used on my Leica T. Nice. I think it's great when you can find lenses that you love and become very kind of attached to. You know how they work and you know how they behave. They become like an extension of you. It's like cameras, isn't it? We were talking about this, about being able to just pick up your camera and just be able to change the settings without thinking about it. So,
yes, yeah.
Nick Can says, hello, everybody. Hello. Great to see you again. Uncle Ray says, are you aware that the Sigma 18 300mm has an AML close-up screw-in that gives 1:2, which is half life size, which makes it very versatile. Crop sensor DC model, but regrettably not as yet in Fuji X. You can tell that he used to be a rep, can't you?
Yeah. You can't, the Sigma in those veins, I tell you, right?
Yeah, exactly. You cut him open, it'd be like a stick of rock with Sigma going through it, wouldn't it? So, we'll have to test Aidan in a few months' time, won't we, and see if he knows all these things. Steve says,
Ray Aidanoff,
yeah. Steve says, hi guys, great to see you. Great to see you too. By the way, I think your bag might have come in.
It did.
You have to do, yeah. So there we go. Work gig in way. So sorry I'm late. No problem at all. And good to hear from you too, Ray. That's aimed at you, Mr. Fitchett. My friend had 5D3 and 7D2, which he regards as almost best of both worlds. I think we'd probably concur with that because the 7D2 is a great camera. It's kind of a shame they didn't produce a Mark III version because it was like the 7D and the 7D Mark II were great for sports, weren't they?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think the only real thing that struggled, hey,
with the body shape on them as well.
Yeah, definitely. Nick Can says 14mm to 600mm in my working day as I work in different areas of photography from architecture to sports and wildlife. I use 1.4 tele if I need to zoom in instead of post. We didn't even talk about teleconverters and extension tubes, etc. That would be another conversation.
So much, more. And again, it's interesting, what Nick's talked about here as well. And I think I was thinking about this because we've had just segueing slightly. We've had a lot of interest about people talking about workflow as well. So have no fear, that is coming. We've definitely got something in the pipeline for workflow. But again, me and Joel were talking about it, and the way that we see workflow and also, just generally taking pictures is really different. And I think again, when you're going out taking pictures for work and going out taking pictures for yourself or something like that, you definitely think in 2 different ways. When you're going out on a job, things are planned. It's just like, right, I need this lens, and then I'm good to go. So I think it is, it's a very different set of mindset, isn't it, Joel?
For sure. And I think that comes with experience as well, in the sense 100%. That you'll just take the lenses that you think are going to be right for that job. Whereas if you're being creative or learning or both, then you might take a series of lenses so that you can try some ideas that you might have picked up looking at other people's work, or thought, I wonder what an 85mm would look like if I stitched 20 of them side by side.
Exactly.
Because that's how these things happen, isn't it? Is the serendipity of having the right lens at the right time, and you go, oh, I'll give that a go. Or thinking, I've got the wrong lens at the right time, and then finding out actually you can make a good situation out of it because you've tried something you never would have done before. Perhaps like with the landscape photography, a lot of people like using a wide maybe next time you go out doing some landscape photography, leave the wide at home and take a 70 to 200 with you,
Try
and
it. Give it a go.
really scare yourself, but see how it brings the world into your image in a different way to what a wide angle might do. So Nick Can says, excellent discussion. Thanks. Glad you could join us. Andrew says, hi, bit late, no worries. And good to see you. And then Nick Can says, new Canon F8 RF lens okay for daytime, but not great for nighttime or low light situation, for sure. And also that goes along with your 1.4 teleconverter comment a bit ago, is that you can use teleconverters to achieve greater focal length, but then you've got to consider the compromise, especially with 2x, of cutting out some light. But with these RF lenses and with the RF mount, arguably there's quite a good combination in terms of getting more light in, which they wouldn't have achieved ordinarily in the past. So, oh, David Metcalf, what a question! If money wasn't an issue, what setup would you choose? Oof, I don't know. It just maybe we should do that.
We've said it before, David. We'd have everything. If money was no option, we would have all the zooms and all the primes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Money was no option.
And the camera also, it depends, doesn't it? Because it depends on the job. Like, I think if I was doing wildlife and I was having to hike up a mountain or through a load of forest, I'd definitely go for an Olympus setup. But then if I was doing low light photography, I'd probably choose, I don't know, like a Canon or a Sony, I think. And maybe like the Sigma 14mm or the new Sony 14mm.
Upsets me slightly you didn't say Nikon then, but carry on.
But my thing with Nikon, I don't know, I just don't get on with Nikon. They're great cameras, great company. I'm very grateful that I got to go to the golf with them, but I don't know, I just don't get on with it, and that's my prerogative, and that's why I think like when you decide on cameras, it should be about what you enjoy. I think, like, we try and encourage people, don't we? We get people coming in going, oh, I want to get a 5D Mark IV, but then they pick up a D850 and they're like, oh, this feels nice. I'm like, well, why are you going for a 5D Mark IV? Oh, somebody on YouTube told me to. I'm like, no, you just go for the one that feels great in your hand. I don't know, that's going to be an age-old question, isn't it?
David. We work in a shop, we see too much.
Yeah, for sure. Steve says, I reckon Canon just want you to buy a new set of lenses. I know you can use the EF adapter, but also don't think all the main range R-mount lenses have been released yet, have they? This is the thing when they, big companies like Canon and Nikon move mounts, which we don't see very often because it's massively expensive, both for them and the consumer. But equally, I think the great thing about Canon is that they get the EF-RF adapter, but it actually improves the behavior of your lenses. So your old LEF lenses will actually perform better in many cases on the EF-RF adapter than they ever did on your EF camera. So not all of the R-mount lenses have been released. A lot of them are still being manufactured or have yet to even been announced. But you can see that they've clearly got an idea of what they want to achieve.
Again, Canon held back going into any system because they didn't want to, because if we look at EF, they had an opportunity of bringing out a new lens system when they moved over to digital, but they didn't, because they wanted to make sure that they wanted to keep the same thing. They wanted you to stay in the family. That's what Canon wanted to do.
They didn't want to alienate people.
Yeah, because of new technologies and new qualities that have come out, and just purely because of physics, that there needed to be a new mount available, even to the point where I hear discussions online where they're thinking of potentially making an APS-C RF mount, and then actually moving sort of everything into 2-mount systems. But nothing official out of Canon yet, just purely in rumor mill.
Speculation.
But Canon, I think all the manufacturers are trying to keep their end user in mind, you guys in mind, when they think about moving across. and I think that is definitely at the forefront of their minds more than anything. But
Yeah.
I can understand how it can be a little bit, once again, new lenses being released, or they just want me to buy new lenses and stuff.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's a hard one to follow. But like Joel said, bringing out that EF adapter that will actually improve your older lenses is just showing that Canon hopefully are trying the best.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Johnny Mo says, "Hi lads, currently sat on the cliff edge watching gannets up on north coast of Scotland. Wow.
nice.
Yeah, I can't resist tuning in. Ah, that sounds ideal. Like being able to watch that and have a signal strong enough to watch us two weirdos.
Brilliant,
It's
mate.
great.
Brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, it's brilliant. That's interesting, Johnny. It's great that you could be with us. Rob says the Industar lens was only £25 from eBay. Gotta love eBay.
Wow. There you go.
Other auction sites may exist. Nick Cann says, any idea of Canon R3 and Nikon Z9? Well, we've had a few pre-orders for them, even though they don't strictly exist yet.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. So
still in development stage. It's interesting. They're obviously. I think again it's down to producing them, and stuff isn't available to produce them. I think so. There's even more delays. But again, have no fear. Once we have information on these things,
we will
we'll
let
definitely
you know.
be talking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Canon will be bringing someone into our show as well to talk about the R3 as well. So, and hopefully Nikon as well. So, it'd be nice to get somebody from Nikon coming in and seeing as well. So, all being well.
Yeah, for sure. So there we go.
That's it. That's brilliant.
Thank you for the comments, everybody.
Thank you for the comments. It's wonderful seeing again so many comments coming in live. It's great. And love having a conversation about different lenses and stuff with everyone watching as well. So, Joel, any final thought before we break up for the weekend?
Use a 70-200 instead of a wide angle, or vice versa, and see what you get.
I was just about to say vice versa if you only use them, but or I tell you what, no, if you used to use it, go even further, 100 to 400, 600
yeah.
Yeah. Whatever someone thinks you should be using, try and use the complete opposite and see what you can produce. So
exactly.
No, it's absolutely amazing.
What are your thoughts?
I don't do thoughts.
You do? You do when I ask.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did last week, I'm pretty sure.
Dude, all right, okay. My thoughts. What do I have on the weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yours is so good though. Just try that.
That's a rubbish excuse. There we go. All right then. I'll let you out with that one.
All right. Okay. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Joel. And thank you to everyone watching as well. So it's always wonderful to see people watching live. If you're not watching this video live right now, you can always catch us live and tune in on the fun, if you can call it that. We stream live every Friday at 4:30.
Unless we don't.
Unless we don't. Because you're trying to get out of next week, aren't you?
I'm not. I'm just saying that. Just saying those times when we've started late.
Oh yeah, okay. You're talking about when you're late.
Oh, when I'm late. I don't understand how I get that blame. You were the one who made us late last time.
All right, mate. Whatever makes you feel. If you haven't done already, make sure you go over to our Facebook and YouTube channels. And
you should stand up and turn round.
Oh, flipping heck! I'm gonna have to de-mic.
There we go.
You're gonna have to say it though.
So Paul's got this T-shirt that Johnny Mo made for us. What are you doing? Oh, there we go. So we'd like you to likey, share, and subscribe to our channel and Facebook and Instagram and whatever other social media channels that you might be on that we're on. It just helps us out, and it helps get the word out to more people. So if you can like the video and like our page if you don't already, that would be most appreciated. And if you've bought stuff from us leave us a Trustpilot review or a Facebook review or a Google review or all three. We'd be very, very grateful.
You do the outro a lot better than I do. I don't know how I fell into doing the outro, but there we go.
You just like talking more than me, mate.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Cheers. Bye now.